Penguin Random House Audio presents A Rare Find by Joanna Lowell. Read for you by Ros Watt. Dear readers, I hope you enjoy Elf and Georgie's journey. They have many adventures on the bumpy, boisterous road to their happy ending. Please note that one of these adventures involves a dangerous interlude in a confined space. Elf and Georgie also confront casual and callow misogyny, most often perpetuated by Elf's father, and they grapple on page with the legacies of parental abandonment and death. Elf's father is an antiquary, a person who studies antiquities. He and some of his cronies express problematic ideas about England's origins that are implicitly linked to racist ideologies and imperialism, ideas that are challenged within the novel. The queer characters in A Rare Find are living full lives. However, given the social and legal censure on LGBTQ+ relationships in Regency England, they deal with various degrees of emotional and material strain due to the conflict between the world they live in and the ways in which they love. The term, non-binary, didn't exist during the Regency, and people didn't have a practice of sharing their pronouns, as we do in many community organisations, schools and workplaces today. If Georgie could step out of these pages and join our present reality, they would likely identify as non-binary and use they-them pronouns with everyone. In the novel, they use they-them pronouns, only within their intimate circle of friends, with whom they're able to talk about their particular experience of gender. A Rare Find is about two people finding all sorts of things: passion, community, queer ancestors, the dream of a bigger, better, freer world they want to try to bring into being together. And last, but not least, treasure. Happy reading. Joanna. 1. Derbyshire, 1818. The bushes thrashed violently. Elfreda put down her trowel and sat back on her heels. The bushes began to growl. "Wolves," she guessed. "Two ferocious, green-eyed wolves from the Dark Peak." One bush gave a loud gasp. "Are there wolves in the Dark Peak?" The other bush made a shushing noise. "Most certainly," said Elfreda. She liked inventing legends as much as she liked reading them. "The Dark Peak is where the wolves went when mean old Edward Longshanks tried to have them all killed. You can hear them howling when the wind blows from the north." Both bushes squealed. "Is it far?" asked the one. In an instant, Elfreda understood her blunder. She could already imagine her sisters skipping into the craggy wilds. "Terribly far." She adopted a commiserating tone. "And the way is closely guarded by a regiment of aunts armed with curling tongs." The bushes, which had been rustling excitedly, now observed a horrified silence. It had been nearly 3 years since Aunt Susan had returned to Surrey, but her tenure at Marsden Hall had left an indelible mark. Not the improving one that she'd intended. "And castor oil," added Elfreda for good measure. "These aunts won't let anyone step foot near a wolf. They are the sort who prohibit dogs in the nursery." She couldn't see her sisters' faces, but she thought the foliage drooped. Good. Dejection was better than them running off and someone finding them 1,000 years from now in a peat bog on Howden Moors. She turned her attention back to her work. She'd been digging for weeks, cutting trenches across the wooded bluff, a slow and solitary effort. Once Papa had lost interest, he'd stopped paying the labourers who'd helped break ground. Part of her wondered if it was folly to dig so long without assistance, and without result. Take this trench. She'd exposed a layer of loam, and then marl, and then clay, and then something darker, possibly char from ancient cook fires. No buckles, though. No nails, no fragments of pottery. No proof. All her hopes rested on an entry in a local annal included in Papa's manuscript copy of The Anglo-Saxon Chronicle, an entry for AD 868. This year the heathen men overran Mercia as far as Twynham, burning and breaking so that many were slain. They remained in Mercia, and there fixed their winter quarters. The heathen men wouldn't have fixed their winter quarters in Twynham, a small settlement exposed on all sides. They'd have looted St. Alkmund's and the abbey and moved on until they reached a defensive position. This bluff, the closest to Twynham, and the highest ground for miles. It towered above the river and sloped down to what was now her family's parkland. A few inked lines had brought her here, and also intuition and common sense. This was the spot, the one she would have chosen if she were a sea-born raider. Ergo, she refused to give up. More growls made her turn her gaze on the undergrowth. She could see Hilda's foot protruding, a foot shod in a badly scuffed boot with trailing laces. Unless it was Matilda's foot. The 6-year-old twins shared only a passing physical resemblance, but they were equally ruinous to leather, and muslin, and velvet upholstery. "Let me guess again," Elfreda pretended to ponder. "I know. You are giant growling moles." She beckoned with the trowel. "Come, dear moles, let us tunnel together deep into the earth where we shall find the silver ingots of the great heathen army." "We are bears." Hilda crawled from the bush. She'd a long red scratch on her cheek and a moth-eaten fur tippet wrapped around her head. She rose onto her knees, hooked her fingers into claws and bared her teeth. "And we are ravens." "Ravenous!" Matilda crawled after her. "We aren't ravens bears. Ravens bears have feathers. We are ravenous bears. We have a great hunger, like the hunger of 1044. Papa says it was a sign of doom." Elfreda frowned. Whenever Papa was in a sulk, he had his children gather in the library after dinner so he could recite to them all the grimmest episodes in the history of the English nation. "There's no such thing as doom," Elfreda said it brightly. "Isn't that a sign of doom?" Hilda was considering Elfreda with a frown. "What?" Elfreda held her breath as her sister crawled closer and hovered a fingertip between her brows. "Oh," said Elfreda, swiping at her fringe and almost certainly leaving another smudge. "It's dirt." Hilda was still considering, so Elfreda offered an alternative explanation. "It is a sign that I am an archaeologist." The twins surprised her by nodding at once. "That's why you dig holes," said Matilda. Elfreda nodded too. This acceptance, swift, uncomplicated, and absolute, did something strange to her heart. The Albion Society of Antiquaries didn't allow female fellows, and only Papa's name appeared on 2 dissertations on the Saxon grave hills of the Peak District, even though she'd authored the 2nd dissertation in its entirety. Elfreda Marsden was nobody. Painfully awkward at social gatherings, unable to speak in front of a group, let alone sing while plinking along on the pianoforte, and with nothing else to show for herself. But children saw possibility where adults did not. Hilda and Matilda were bears, and Elfreda was an archaeologist, and that was that. She smiled at the roly-poly, round-faced little cubs, smiled so widely her forehead itched. She scratched and flakes showered down. Dirt, from the Old Norse. Drit. The great heathen army had left behind many of their words. What she needed was one of their swords. "Go off home," she made a shooing motion. "Assuage your great hunger with seed cake." The twins shot to their feet. "You can bother Agnes," Elfreda shouted after them as they ran through the trees. "But don't disturb Papa. He's with Mr. Clutterbuck." At least, she hoped he was with Mr. Clutterbuck. The visit, Mr. Clutterbuck's first in over a year, could last well into the afternoon. Mr. Clutterbuck and Papa had been friends and colleagues for decades, and always had much to discuss. On the other hand, the visit could have ended as soon as it began, with shouting and broken china. Mr. Clutterbuck was now the president of the Albion Society, which had involved stabbing Papa in the back. Elfreda had poured the...
Sample complete. Ready to continue?